Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Facebook engages in Wrongspeak enforcement. This has been a growing trend, and what we want to look at today is the situation surrounding Crossfit. So, Crossfit is a company that does physiological and nutrition education, and they're not quite a mainstream group. And I think that that's really what caused some people to think that, oh, these guys aren't following the dietary guidelines set forth by the governments, and so therefore, it's not very good. Well, and this is where we have this intersection of free speech and whatever else. Well, Facebook decided without any warning that they were simply going to completely block CrossFit entire. It was one CrossFit Facebook group, but they blocked it without any notice, without any reasoning why. They actually did later reinstate that group, but CrossFit said, you know what, I'm not playing Facebook's game anymore, and they pulled all of their groups, all of their accounts off of everything related to Facebook. And then they posted this article here, looks like 2 days ago, so on Thursday. So it's CrossFit. Wow, I'm just not speaking right today. CrossFit, they do these various views, and one of their biggest concerns is that a lot of your modern nutritional guidelines do not follow science as much as they follow political trends, politics, and this is true. You can't sit back and say science is science and it's the ultimate truth. Speaking as a person with a lot of advanced knowledge in science is just as political as anything else, and science is just as easy co-opted as anything else. And we'll get into some of this, but basically they're saying that recently Facebook deleted without warning or explanation Banting 7-Day Meal Plan user group, which had 1.65 million users who post testimonials and other information regarding the efficacy of low carbohydrate, high fat diet. Well, the site has subsequently been reinstated, also without warning or explanation. Facebook's actions could give any serious person reason to pause, especially those of us engaged in activities contrary to the prevailing opinion. And that's so fascinating. And so they looked into a variety of different cases. So they wrote here, these publicly sourced complaints include but are not limited to the following. Facebook collects and aggregates user information and shares it with state and federal authorities as well as security organizations from other countries. Facebook collaborates with government security agencies on a massive citizen surveillance program such as PRISM. Facebook censors and removes user accounts based on unknown criteria and at the request of third parties, including government and foreign government agencies. Facebook collects, aggregates, and sells user information as a matter of business. Its business model allows governments and businesses alike to use its algorithmically conjured advertising categories as sophisticated data mining and surveillance tools. Facebook's news feeds are censored and crafted to reflect the political leanings of Facebook's utopian socialists while remaining vulnerable to misinformation campaigns designed to stir up violence and prejudice. Facebook, as a matter of business and principle, has weak intellectual property restrictions and is slow to close down IP theft accounts. Facebook has poor security protocols and has been subject to the largest security breaches in our history. And finally, Facebook is acting in the service of food and beverage industry interests by deleting the accounts of communities that have identified corrupted nutritional science responsible for unchecked global chronic disease. In this, it follows the practices of Wikipedia and other privacy platforms that host public content but retain the ability to remove or silence without opportunity for real debate or appeal information, perspectives outside of a narrow scope or belief or thought. In this case, the approved perspective has resulted in the deaths of millions through preventable diseases. Facebook is thus complicit in global chronic disease crisis. For these reasons, CrossFit Inc. has placed Facebook and its associated properties under review and will no longer support or use Facebook services until further notice. Now, Morning Chalk Up goes into this a little bit detail, and what they actually do is They focus on looking at some of the specific cases, so they'll actually give us the references citing some of these situations. So mishandling user data, things like this. And the problem here is that it's not just politics. It's not just the fake news surrounding politics. It's a variety of different ideas and thoughts and things like this. And so with this, why I wanted to dive into this and talk about this in more detail is this is something that I know a lot about, and I know that what they're saying is correct. If you go into a basic biochemistry course and you learn about how insulin works, okay, insulin is the thing that causes sugar uptake by the cells, because high blood sugar in your body is toxic. So your body has to respond to signals to pull the sugar out of the blood system to you maintain a narrow range of blood sugars, right? And so when you eat sugars, sugars do this, proteins and fats don't, but sugars, they trigger the release of insulin, and then the insulin goes in your body and causes the sugar to be brought in, which is then stored as fat. So if your body is chronically eating sugar, you're constantly eating sugar, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, sugar, 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 your body never reverses the process and burns fat. Basic biochemistry, complete well-known fact, any textbook will tell you that. The problem is that oftentimes your medical community gets their information not from informed of the basics of science, but from the policies of the people above. If you're a doctor and you don't follow the guidelines of the American Medical Association, you can be disbanded. Okay, you can lose your medical license. I looked into being a nutritionist at one point in time. I said, I'm not going to do that because I have to follow the guidelines set forth by the United States government, which I know are not correct. So of course, in the middle of saying all this, I'm not going to say, go listen to your doctor instead of listening to me, which is the required thing. But at the same time, go talk to your doctor about this stuff and share with them some of this information and ask them, do they know what the pathway of insulin is? Do they know what eating sugar and protein does? Work with your healthcare providers. But you don't have to completely listen to everything they say on the one hand, but you don't completely go against them either. You got to find this even balance with you as the central mediator in between. So with that being said, one of the best resources I've seen for the lay population was actually this movie called Fathead. So Tom Naughton he has his degree in journalism, and he used to write for the these nutrition articles. So he wrote articles saying the same thing. And he actually watched the video Super Size Me, which is, this image up here is, related to, it's a parody of the Super Size Me where the guy's, Murdoch's face is stuffed with french fries. That documentary, Super Size Me, is so fake, it's not even funny. And he actually did Fathead, initially started as a rebuttal to Super Size Me, where Naughton went on a fast food diet for 30 days and actually lost, I think it was 12 pounds. All of his biomarkers turned healthy because he went in there looking towards what the science actually says, not the anointed government agencies and things like that, but what the science actually reports. And so he did this video called Fathead, which you can find it on YouTube. You do have to be logged in to view it. It's an age restricted for some reason. I don't know why. Probably just related to the company. But you can watch the full video on YouTube. It is absolutely worth watching. But there's actually another one. I thought I had it pulled up here. There is actually another one from him that I want you to watch. This is kind of your assignment. It is called Diet, Health, and the Wisdom of Crowds. So, and he actually, I found out today that he actually did a newer version of this. I've seen the older version, which is excellent. There's the newer version, which I have watched about 3/4 of it. I ran out of time. I just found it this morning. So we're going to copy link location. I'm going to drop that in the chat there. And so that is something you should watch, not because of the nutrition stuff, but because what he talks about in this video is exactly what's happening on nearly all political fronts right now, engaging in all of this blacklisting by Silicon Valley companies. All of this censorship. He talks about the difference between the wisdom of the crowds and the vision of the anointed. And then there's a third book in here, I think it's called Anti-Fragile, where he talks about it in this new talk. And this really highlights exactly what's going on in the world. So it's look beyond the nutrition, look beyond the politics, look beyond all this to say, this is what's going on. That what has happened is that we have recognized that the crowds oftentimes give us more information than the anointed people. And so what happens is we have caused this shift, and it's caused a hurt to the corporate underpinnings and the corporate powers. And then in the middle of this shift, they don't like it. And so they're requesting these companies to block it, which goes back to CrossFit's initial idea that Facebook is acting at the service of the food and beverage industry by deleting accounts in communities that they have identified as the corrupted national science responsible. Now, if you don't want to take the advice of CrossFit and you don't want to take the advice of a nutrition journalist, look at Robert Lustig. Robert Lustig is a pediatrician and a science researcher, UCSF, and he also actually took his sabbatical to get a law degree so that he could inform policy. Now, he just wrote this book that I have not gotten a chance to read yet. Again, another thing I just found out he did today. It's called The Hacking of the American Mind, the science behind the corporate takeover of our bodies and brains, where he's looking specifically at how corporates have overtaken science in the case of health. So what are his academic credentials? So these are some of his other books. Springer, Obesity Before Birth. He's talking Hacking the American Mind, Fat Chance, and The Shopper's Guide. Sugar has 56 names. So he has all these different books, but these are a variety of articles, and the majority of these are in peer-reviewed articles. This is a actual practicing medical doctor who is actually a researching endocrinologist who actually does real research. In fact, he has probably the only scientific lecture I know of on YouTube that has over 500 million views, or 5 million views, and that is called, I think it's called Sugar, the Bitter Truth. So this is, of course, his scientific liturgy. So this is a guy who actually does know what he's doing in this. And what he does is he takes the approach to say, let's create policy to help us so that we can understand what better health and nutrition is. So some of the things that his group does up in California is they teach people how to cook. A huge problem in our modern society is that a lot of people just don't know how to cook. And so if you learn how to cook, you learn how to make real food, and you learn to leave the processed stuff at the grocery store and just take home the real whole foods and learn to cook real food from that, that can greatly help you in all of this. And so it's interesting that Facebook wants to pick CrossFit to pick on a little bit, but CrossFit says, you know what? This is just one of many things. How many recent conservative voices have been cut out of Facebook? Okay, in fact, there's even been some liberal voices cut out of there. Not that they've broken any laws, not that they've broken any rules, it's just that Facebook just didn't agree with them. And so Facebook is definitely enforcing wrongthink. They're saying, you're not thinking the way we want you to be thinking, so we're going to pull you off our platform. And then once one of them does it, most of them follow suit. And then what ends up happening is we have a case where only the top-down system, the vision of the anointed, is going to parry through, and we can't get any other information to question anything else that's going on. So those are kind of the thoughts I want to talk about here today. Again, talk to your doctors, but talk to your doctors. Bring this information to them. Ask them about this research. Ask them about these health standards. Ask them if they personally have studied into this themselves, rather than just grabbing information from a pharma company or grabbing information from the associations or grabbing information from the government. That is the best thing that you can do. Take control of your health by taking control of your food. And that's what CrossFit's major issue was, and that's why Facebook blocked them, that group, because they were talking about things that were contrary to the modern accepted and medical views. Let me know what you think about that in the comments down below.